On March 26th, there was a breaking new decision in the world of how can we ostracize trans people the most by the IOC, the International Olympics Committee, on trans women athletes now being banned from the Olympics, which is something that transphobes have been fighting for a really long time, despite the science and the research showing that there's no, inherent advantage between a cis woman and a trans woman who's been on HRT for a long enough period, something along the lines of 2 years, still getting banned. This is being celebrated as a huge win for TERFs. The gender critical, because now the men are no longer allowed to compete with the poor, frail, weak women. The males are no longer invading the spaces of the poor females. The reality is that no woman who transitioned from being born a male competed at the 2024 Paris Summer Games, though weightlifter Laurel Hubbard did at the Tokyo Olympics in 2021 without winning a medal. The ability for trans women to compete in the Olympics has been in place since 2004. Note how there's no mention of trans men, obviously, because, testosterone is perceived as a performance-enhancing drug. So if a trans man is going on HRT, he cannot compete at like a higher professional level in general. Even though it's just about balancing out levels, it is still seen as like an unfair advantage. Because a lot of the changes that actually happened between male and female manifest during puberty, right? When it comes to upper body strength and so on. And in order to make sure that no trans women are competing, they are now resorting to checking out your chromosomes. Sex testing actually, like the IOC didn't want to do sex testing because they actually did that before. It was found out that, hey, actually, a lot of cis women are actually intersex and don't meet the requirement of what this political agenda deems acceptable. We saw the same situation with like J.K. Rowling and so on going after Iman Khalif. They do it again, right? J.K. Rowling, March 26, 2026. Tweeting, again, today's ruling by the IOC means a welcome return to fair sport for women and girls, but I'll never forget the scandal of Paris 2024 when people who consider themselves supremely virtuous and progressive publicly cheered on men punching women. Iman Khalif is a cis woman, but because she doesn't meet the ignorant belief system of J.K. Rowling and the gender critical cult, it's no, she's actually intersex and has like a male condition that only males have, because only males have like this form of intersex condition. So that means that she's actually a man. It's just cruel, it's unnecessary, and it's going to cause a lot of harm. The first woman excluded by chromosome testing later turned out to have mosaicism. One half of cells had XY, one half XX, and had to be apologized to decades on. The last had androgen insensitivity and couldn't develop male sex characteristics even if you inject her with enough T to kill an elephant. A lot of female athletes are going to find out that apparently they're not women, even though they're cis women. It kind of reinforces the belief system of like who someone like J.K. Rowling, who has a very patriarchal view, a very misogynistic view on women, what they deem acceptable. And it's about hijacking the term woman and segregating people, right? That's what this is about. This is the amount of women. You have a small minority being trans women. You have a small minority being intersex women, which, to be fair, I also would like see as like the over category of someone who is trans, because maybe there's like something going on. Maybe let me just do like a split thing to get both sides. And then there are also like women of color and so on, right? But then what TERFs want is to just have like a certain part be considered women, right? And everybody else is just other, and only these ones are valid. the ones who have XX, the ones who have egg-producing equipment, how J.K. Rowling said. And a lot of these TERFs actually think that being a woman means that you have suffered, right? I talked about TERFs a lot of times, that they don't have any joy and so on, but a lot of it is just like a certain set of like suffering because of like their reproductive organs, for instance, right? A lot of it is also about looks and behavior. If you want to be a woman, you have to look a certain way, you have to sound a certain way, you have to act a certain way. This has also in the history of humankind been used in order to invalidate and segregate women of color. We see the same rhetoric now be used against trans women, but obviously also intersex women. It's not about protecting women, it's just about separating who deserves the label woman and what quote-unquote benefits that grants you in life, right? If you can separate, if you can define who a woman is, then you can determine who deserves to be helped, who deserves to be in women's shelters, who deserves to go into women's sports, who deserves to go into women's changing rooms, who deserves to go into women's clothing stores. That is just like the main agenda of it. It's just everything is about control, everything is about limiting people's freedoms, and it's also to pretend that there's some biological reasoning behind all of like this unreasonable political nonsense. This is going to hurt a lot of women, and the thing is, like, the women that this hurts are not being deemed worthy by people like J.K. Rowling, so they don't care what happens to them. And a lot of transphobia, sadly, we are a really small minority, and people can just ignore what happens to a marginalized group, to a small minority. They can just dismiss it because, like, well, I don't see an immediate effect on my life. Maybe I meet all of the beauty expectations and societal norms and so on. Maybe I am comfortable with the prison that society wants to trap me in, so why should I care? And then maybe they're going to find out that, hey, maybe you're not fitting those descriptions that people like J.K. Rowling are pushing. Maybe you're actually intersex and you didn't know about it. Maybe male and female aren't two different species. Maybe it's a little bit more complicated. What happens when it affects you? And the thing is, like, with the rise of misogyny, the fact that something harms women doesn't really carry that much weight anymore, because so many people are being radicalized, so many people are pushing for more removal of bodily autonomy, right? There's also this thing with Trump administration admits to medically experiment on trans people in prisons. The Trump administration admits to testing conversion therapy on trans prisoners and applies its policy of forcibly detransitioning trans men in prisons, has the aim of preserving their fertility. I talked about this in another video before, but it's just like, for trans women, it's just like, oh, you're male and you're evil and you're predatory and you are taking advantage of your enormous, gigantic strength that you have with your male DNA to take advantage of the female, the weak female. And for trans men, it's like, oh, you're just confused. Don't you want to have a family? These are things that have also been used by medical care providers who try to convince women, cis women, they shouldn't actually mess with their reproductive organs, right? If they're unhappy, if they're struggling, maybe it's just their uterus saying that, you know, maybe you should actually just get pregnant. Maybe that's going to solve everything. It's just a lot of misogyny being repackaged as something new and used in order to normalize a lot of these talking points more and more. I have people call me nuder because I don't produce gametes anymore. Wild how far we have actually gotten in the society with like the transphobia and the normalization of these talking points. A lot of these things are just about reproductive organs, but that's not how human beings work, and it is really wild to me that it is socially acceptable to define who someone is based on their genitalia and what reproductive organs they have. And these things, these rulings and so on, they don't really benefit anyone except for the patriarchy, because if you push the idea that even if someone is a mab but transitioned, they are going to be so much stronger than any cis woman, while also pushing the idea that trans women are too weak for the military. If you push this in sports, if you push that not even just in physical sports, but also remember how World Chess was restricting both trans women and trans men. Banning trans women because there's just a biological advantage at thinking. They're just more capable, they're just more skilled. These men pretending to be women are just so much better than the real biological, weak, fragile female. It is disgusting, and it's just reducing everybody to their reproductive purposes, their roles. There are so many Republicans talking about how women's rights need to be taken away. And yeah, maybe you can't force them out of like a career path, but maybe if we just tax them more if they don't give children, maybe then we are forcing them, enticing them to continue the bloodline and start reproducing, because that's what it's all about. That is what capitalism is all about, right? It's about people just reproducing, so the companies have more labor force. It's just cruel how someone like J.K. Rowling is being celebrated. Obviously, when it comes to Twitter, 85% of it is just bots anyways. A billionaire who can just use their wealth to fund all of like these lawsuits, these legal actions, the Supreme Court rulings and so on, to push for these changes to influence policies. And the opposition, biologists, researchers, and so on, are not being heard because they are being suppressed. I also talked about the girl guiding situation back then, right? I talked about how girl guiding has been pressured into changing their policies on being trans inclusive, and now having to ban and push trans girls out of the scouting groups. 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old trans girls portrayed as predatory and evil, abusive men. And that is the reason why they need to be removed, so these cis girls have their safe space. Obviously ridiculous. I hope more people are going to wake up, but sadly when it comes to suffering, there is a social hierarchy as well, and people will not really speak up unless it's going to affect them directly. Unless cis women are going to get commonly invalidated, transvestigated, having people demand, random strange men demand to see their genitalia, then maybe some people are going to wake up.